Coming up next, we're gonna go to Mermaids. Mermaids is a charity that supports transgender and gender diverse young people. Now, CJ, who works at Mermaids, may be joining us later, but Krystyna, who's a helpline manager at Mermaids, is with us now. Krystyna, welcome.
Hi, David.
Hi, Krystyna. Now, I wonder if you can start by telling us your story.
Okie doke, I will do. So I'm going to talk, I've been asked to talk as a parent because apart from being a helpline manager, I'm a parent. So that is my story today. And my story goes back to, I have to start in 2005, actually, on the day that our child was born. And we celebrated with great joy the birth of a boy, like we do. We gender our children, and it was a boy, and that was it. And so we go back to that day in 2005. 9 years later, I remember the day in the bathroom. I was running a bath for my child, and my child said, "I need to tell you something awful." My heart dropped because there was only one thing that could be awful for me, and it certainly wasn't this, because I didn't even think about this. So they said they couldn't speak to me. So I said, "Here's a phone, text me." And I went downstairs and they texted me the words, "I'm not a boy, I'm a girl." And actually, my heart went, thank God they haven't been abused. That was what I'd thought. It wasn't that, but little did I know how difficult that journey would then become as we moved forward. So we are 6 years on since that day. Our child transitioned in year 6 of primary school. Year 6 went well. They went to secondary school and life became a nightmare. They were bullied. They had glue put in their hair. For 6 months, we went through this. Mermaids were trying to support us to get the school to do something. They didn't until one day I was called in because my child had been shot at with a pellet gun. Because simply for being a trans child and being a trans girl, and she was shot at, and we had to remove her from school then for a year because of that. Luckily, we found a second school where she went to, but still that story followed her. And so it's been a really difficult journey through that story. But what I want to add to that story on a plus side, so I've added that bit first, and I'm going to a plus side. I worked within the church when our child transitioned, and I was terrified of the church. I gave everybody a letter within my 2 denominations telling them what was happening, and went home that Sunday and waited for the worst reaction in the world. And it never happened. I got phone calls from my congregation going, "We're here for you." And I remember the 80-year-old man asking to meet with me, and I thought, here we go. It's going to hit me now. And he goes to me, "Can I just tell you something, Krystyna?" I said, "You certainly can. I want you to be very careful with your child because they're going through a lot." And it was amazing to watch those denominations. And I come into this conversation from that angle as well, because we all think the church is going to judge us, not be supportive. We wouldn't have got through those early years without the church supporting us. And of course, without Mermaids, because I wasn't working with Mermaids when our child transitioned. That's how I found Mermaids. And we would never have got where we are without that support. We were lucky the LGBT organisation at our church had Susie Green's direct phone number, which for me was amazing. We could phone her and she said, "Take a breath, all is going to be fine. It's going to be good." And it was good. So we're 6 years on. We're with the Tavistock and Portman, in case anyone doesn't know, is the only gender identity service in England and Wales for young people under 18. We've been with them for 6 years, going through assessments and processes. No easy journey there, to be honest, to get there easy. We're going through that process and we're on that journey, which of course has been affected by everything that's been happening lately, all the legal stuff that's been going on. Again, outside of being a helpline service manager, Mermaids then have to also support me as a parent because I don't just manage the helpline service. So that's our story, that we are parents. We are struggling every day to support our child who has, with the worsening of transphobia, being affected by that on many, many levels, by watching social media, by people saying stuff to her in school. And she walks into school and she's just a typical teenage girl, but people won't let her leave that behind. The past that was her first start of her past, they don't let her leave that behind. So there's a long background going on there. And I'm sure CJ will add to that when he talks about his life as a young person living this journey.
Yeah, thank you for that, Krystyna. I mean, it's a harrowing story, and we're going to come back to you because I really have some questions for you. But you mentioned CJ there, and we'd like to invite CJ to to come on in and tell CJ his story.
Okay.
Tell
Hi.
us rather his story. Hi, CJ.
Hi. So yeah, so I'm a trans man, which means when I was born as female. But when I was about 11 years old, I realised through watching TV programs that I didn't identify with female. I researched a lot of it on YouTube as I did back then, and I come across someone on YouTube called Alex Bertie, and I realised through them that that's who I was, and that I was trans. I struggled a lot with it at school. I told my pastoral care teacher at school when I was in year 7, so 11 years old, that I wanted to transition to be a boy. And she asked me then if I could just be a lesbian until I left, because it would be easier. I really struggled with this because she was the first adult that I trusted to tell. And I thought if that was the reaction that I was going to get from all adults, then I would just leave it. Fast forward about 5 years, when I was 15, I said, this enough is enough. By this time, I told a handful of friends and another couple of teachers. I took myself to the doctors. I told them, I was like, look, I need something to happen. I can't go on living like this. And they said, come back in 2 weeks. If you're sure, then we'll refer you. So I left it. I went back in 2 weeks. They referred me to the Tavistock and Portman Clinic, like Krystyna just mentioned. But I was still really, really struggling. And at this point, I knew I needed to tell my mum. So I didn't realise how similar mine and Krystyna's stories were, in the fact that I texted my mum. I turned around to her, I texted her one evening and was just like, look, I'm a boy. And she was just like, okay, we'll talk about it in the morning. We never actually spoke about it. And at the beginning of my transition, my mum really struggled. And at one point I thought I was going to have to move out of home. She didn't understand the name change, didn't understand the pronouns. But now she's one of my biggest supporters. Moving on from Tavi and moving on from being a child, I've moved on to adult services. So there's only a handful of services for adults in the UK. And I live down south, so my closest ones are Exeter and London. However, when I was going there, the waiting lists for those 2 clinics were so big that I said to them, no, I'd rather travel to Nottingham and have a shorter waiting list. And since then, I've thrived, really. I've just been living my life as any other man would be, but with the exception that I've had to have surgeries and I've had to have medication and all of that to help me to be where I am today. And also, I wouldn't be where I am today if it weren't for Mermaids. So I found Mermaids when I was 16. And Susie and all of the workers there have helped me so much. And then I've also met one of my best mates there. So if it weren't for Mermaids, I wouldn't be where I was today either.
CJ, can you just realize, how old are you now?
So I'm 23 now.
Okay, you've had an incredible journey for someone so young, a journey I imagine that many of your peers wouldn't have experienced, but maybe people who have gone through the same walk as you. Do you find that there's a similarity in the journey?
Yes, but no. So when I started off at the Tavistock and Portman Clinic, I made friends with a group of people who were about a year older than me. So they got referred to their adult services a year before me, because you get referred when you're 18. And I saw them sitting on waiting lists and basically waiting for something that isn't happening. And I basically, from that, I was able to navigate the system to be like, okay, well, I don't want to go there because they're making people wait for 2 years. I don't want to go there because they're doing this. And I also, a lot of young trans people don't get the support that I got through Mermaids, through my home life, through friends. So I would say I'm quite lucky in the fact that I've had a lot of support, and a lot of young trans people don't get the support that I've had.
Yeah. Krystyna, you through Mermaids, obviously you just heard CJ talking about the experience of saying to his mum, we'll talk about it, and then the conversation never happening. You spoke about what happened with your daughter and how supportive you were, how you were engaged and an integral part of the whole journey. Is your response, or the response that CJ got, more, which is the more common response?
I would say, working on the helpline as well, so I can answer from 2 points, I'd say it's 50-50, because your first reaction is fear. You know, what's going to happen with my child? What's going to go wrong? So I'd say it's 50-50. We have 50% of young parents who phone up and my child's told me this, what do I do? I want to be supportive. Then some that go, I can't do this. But actually, I go, you're on the phone, so you do want to do this. Otherwise, you wouldn't be on the phone, you know. So I think it's a 50-50 situation where you get parents that go, just don't talk about it, you know. But then you do get those parents who absolutely do talk about it and go, I'm not doing this. You are not doing this, and really reject their child. And we see that a lot of the time as well, happening, that they just completely reject their children. And we get lots of calls from young people who have got no home life support at all anywhere. And that's the difficult situation, when there's none at all. CJ's mum didn't talk about it, but at least she was supportive and became supportive. There are children that are not supported out there as well.
Wow. CJ, obviously, even despite the fact that you didn't have the conversation when you needed it, you had to go forward because it's who you are. So in that journey, what is the best piece of advice that you got? I'm going to ask you this question as well, Krystyna, in a minute. But CJ, what's the best advice you got?
I would always say to someone to never lie to yourself about who you are, and stick to being true to yourself, because at the end of the day, the only person that you have got is yourself.
That's great advice. It's, yeah, wow. And Krystyna, how about you?
So I think mine would have been that I was told to make sure I know my stuff. So it wasn't just about supporting my child. I was told not to panic, don't panic. But mine was really what enabled us to support our child, was finding out all the information we needed to support our child. So what did we say when we went to the GP when they said they didn't know how to support? Well, we already knew the answer to that. This is what you need to do. Where do we need to go? What do we need to do? So for me, it was information. You can never have too much information, but also having peers around you that support you, because it's a tough journey. So you need other people around you who understand that journey and can support you on that journey.
Well, having had the benefit of the information that you've now had and the years of this journey that you've had, Krystyna, what do you think schools can do to improve the lives of trans and non-binary young people?
I think there's a couple of things there, David. So first of all, listen to young people. When they say it, they're not following a trend. They're not with a group who think they're doing this. This isn't a trend. It's not something that's trendy at the moment. People don't do this for trends. Okay, that's about trousers and things like that. So first of all, listen to them. Make sure you are open in school. So you have a school where you're wearing a lanyard that says that you have people in school who will listen to those children, that there are allies around. I go into schools where there's nothing there at all that shows they're an ally. A young person won't talk to you unless they've got an ally. So I think that's the first thing. Look at your policies and procedures. How are you supporting those young people? And really pivotal here, training. Schools, teachers are not trained around this. It's not part of the training process. So pivotal for me as a parent and a worker is training. You need that training. You don't know what you're doing either. So actually reach out, even by phoning the phone line and asking to speak to someone. You'll then get that support that you need to support your pupils. So I think that's the best thing.
So at Mermaids, do you offer schools that training?
We do, yep, we do, and that has gone up massively. People are taking, not just schools, all organisations. We've worked with the police, we've worked with social workers, lots of different training, but we do aim it for schools so that schools are ready, because they never know when a young person's going to come to them and say this. They absolutely never know, and so to be ready for that, it's no good coming after the fact, then you're running, trying to catch up with that young person. You get that training in beforehand, you're ready if a young person comes to you.
Thanks, Krystyna. And CJ, how about you? What do you think that schools, churches even, could be doing to improve the situation for young people who are trans, who are non-binary?
I would say a lot. I would agree with Krystyna, because when I went to my teacher and she asked me if I could just be a lesbian until I left, that really, it really hurt me. And it was clear, it's clear now that I'm older that she didn't know what she was doing then. She was trying to be helpful, but also not being very helpful at the same time. So I think a lot of schools, they need that training, they need the knowledge, or they need someone to be able to go talk to if a child does come up to them and say, I'm trans, I'm non-binary, because if they don't know how to support that child's not going to be able to trust them. And I feel like trust is something that really needs to be built as a young person, because I know for me, I didn't talk to anyone that I didn't trust. So I think a lot of it's knowledge and information.
Thank you. Thank you for both of you for being so open and honest. Now, finally, a really quick answer, because we've only got a couple of minutes, but I really want to hear from you on this. Earlier, Bishop Paul sort of laid down the challenge that an ally isn't somebody who's self-declared. An ally has to be declared an ally by the person to whom they are an ally. So what can we do to be good allies? CJ, I'm going to ask you first.
I think for me, anyone in my life that I see as an ally are people that actively support me. They ask me questions about how I'm doing. They're just genuinely interested in what's going on, or if what's happening in my life. They're people that are my friends regardless of the fact that I'm trans. They're people that I've had friends that have been like, oh, can I come to a pride parade with you, because I've never been before and I would like to show my support. It's people like that aren't afraid to give their support and aren't afraid to be seen as LGBT or T. If they're at a pride parade, they're just happy to be there showing their support. And for me, it's someone that I know that I could go to and feel like I'm not going to be judged.
Thank you, CJ. And Krystyna, for you, what makes a good ally?
I am going to go back to something that Rachel said right at the beginning, when Rachel said, stand up and speak. And I'm going to say that, stand up. Do not be afraid to stand up and speak. Speak your voice. Sometimes allies need to speak out for the people they're speaking for. That's what needs to happen. And they need to be prepared to learn, to get the information they need. Don't just sit back and go, oh, I'm supporting someone, so I'm a great ally. Speak out and challenge that. Divert that conversation that's going on in the moment that is really, really putting down the trans community and especially trans children. So for me, it's stand up and speak up.
Krystyna, CJ, thank you so much for your openness, your honesty, and for your sharing your lived experiences with us.